Okay, so there's a couple of different whiteboard episodes about, there's two about the internal calculators. Okay, we covered, just to recap real fast, sensory and then how state will map onto the sensory processing that you're having, and then the value, okay, and then the control, and then the policy, kind of your learning, what's feeding into and updating your beliefs, phenotypes, and personalities, okay? We talked about this mainly because it's prediction, okay? Humans, we're not responding to the environment. We are responding to the predictions we have of the environment. That's that's the basis of human behavior and reaction, okay? That's what it is. It's not just like this blank state. It's the predictions based off of our experiences that are feeding into this. Here, especially here, because of how we're feeling with the state, and then here, after the value, and then how much control do we have over the situation, because I promise you, you don't like uncertainty. And then learning will happen, kind of feeding into this, and then definitely as you're executing the task or you're experiencing your life in the world. Okay. So we talked about prediction error. Just general recap here before we get in what we're going to get into for today. Okay. Prediction error is simply just what it's predicted, what you predicted to encounter versus the actual that happened. Okay. That delta. Okay. And then you can zoom into this and say, okay, reward prediction error. Is the value higher than you predicted? That's going to stamp. Okay. We're going to get there right here. But you can also say aversion prediction error if you really want to zoom into the prediction error model of neuroscience and human behavior, which is the outcome was worse than. Okay. So value, we talk about value here. Remember the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, we call it the scoreboard. This is what's kind of providing the value. It's where all of these things are feeding in, all these neurocorrelates, and telling the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. Actually, I found the paper. I found the paper that I couldn't find it, but then I found it after we recorded that video. I just wanted to show you the amount of interactions and what's happening with the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, okay? Especially these neuromodulatory regions and these loops right here that we talk a lot about, okay? This is another Cell Press journal. It's a fantastic journal. It's a fantastic paper here about the role of the medial prefrontal cortex in memory and decision making. Remember, the medial prefrontal cortex, we outlined the three regions here: the medial orbital frontal cortex, ventral medial prefrontal cortex, and the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex, which is huge for control. I could spend a lot of time on this, but there's videos about this stuff. Is all in the medial prefrontal cortex. Remember, the medial prefrontal cortex leads the way. It's where it's kind of like our conductor for adaptive responses. And that's a big thing with humans and the prefrontal cortex. It's a flexible rule setting machine because we're constantly having to adapt to our environments. And that's like in real time and over time through your history, through your life. Okay. So I wanted to show that with the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. Okay. So now value here is determined. It's the delta of reward minus cost, metabolic cost, okay? So if the reward is higher than the cost, you're going to repeat that. If the reward is lower than the cost, or the cost is higher than the reward, you're going to avoid that. These are the equations of your life. But then we dialed in, okay, so what's another way to look at value? That's net benefits. Your expected reward, back to this, minus the metabolic cost. Okay, remember the brain doesn't like to work. It just wants to respond. And it's evaluating. It's like the metabolic bank accountant. Do I have enough energy on board to do this task? You'll think about that. And then you'll decide that for yourself without the action. You can talk yourself into and out of many things via thought. You can get lost in thought. It's that humans have an infinite capacity for thought. Thoughts are very bad in this situation. And they're just human creation, okay? That's the main goal. Thoughts are human creation. They're not necessarily reality. Okay, so then the last episode after these two about the internal calculators, we talked about anxiety. All right, and then I talked about this paper here, and this is what we're going to kind of explore here. I'm going to give real life examples of how this plays out. Okay, and then we talked about how dopamine and norepinephrine are kind of modulating, amplifying, stamping the value here because dopamine is really associated with that reinforcement, okay, and learning. And norepinephrine is providing biological energy. Okay, remember we talked about the locus coeruleus, the blue spot, how it just sprinkles the brain with neural energy, okay, with that norepinephrine. And it lacks specificity. It just kind of provides the brain this general biological energy to perform the actions, okay? And that this will modulate and amplify. And what we're talking about today, and what you should talk about all the time in your life, is do you persist or do you quit? Persist versus quit is what this is talking about, okay? We have some episodes about the autism. This isn't necessarily autism, but it is related. December, probably 2024, I first talked about internal calculators and persisting versus quitting, and how our phenotype and belief systems kind of dictate our lives, okay? And then with the anxiety, we talked about socialness, because the social world, remember what I just said about the medial prefrontal cortex and adaptive responses, the social world is costly. There's a lot of metabolic cost associated with that, mainly because not being understood. But secondly is the amount of sensory processing. There's a lot to take in. Sensations are like on fast forward. It's a lot to keep up with. Okay, so that's enough background information, I think, for what we're going to cover today. And we're going to talk about persist versus quit in life, okay? And I'm going to use a physical example here, a physical activity of running. But you can also apply this to mental effort, which is, they're like that. But if it's just like, say I want to just read this paper and understand this paper, that's not physical effort. It's not a physical bout. It's more a mental bout. But you can plug and play this with anything in life. Okay, so I like to run. And one thing that you can think about how this is working here is with this expected reward and metabolic cost is if I am running and the effort that I am giving exceeds the cost or even exceeds expectation, the prediction I have, I'm going to constantly persist and keep going. That's a big role of the dopamine and norepinephrine here, okay? So if I am running down the road here, or you can view it this way, like if I just have a guy here running, and he's running down the road here, okay? The time with this visual inputs coming in, the time it takes me to get from here to here, or let's say here to here, this is a little checkpoint, okay? You're doing this. we have these internal calculators, and it's feeding in this value and providing state and value and control over the situation, the control over your motor movements. The time that it takes from here to here or here to here, if it's so-called net benefits, I'm going to keep going. The norepinephrine, and which is shown here with a locus coeruleus, is going to keep fueling me. And the dopamine's like, I like this. This is reinforcing. I'm going to keep going. But let's say over time, I start to slow down and I'm using more metabolic cost. That's going to happen. I'm not David Goggins. I'm not Cam Haines. Even they quit. Eventually, this is going to shift. And the time it takes for me to get from here to here is slower. And then even from here to here is slower. Okay? Or you can think about it from here. I'm running this way. This is like a city block or something. Often you have electrical poles that you're passing by. And as you're passing by these city blocks or the electrical poles, and you're exceeding that time expectation, it's saying go, go, go. Keep going. If it's slower, as you're slowing down and you're just kind of battling in to get to that next checkpoint, because remember, you've built in this experience and this ability to evaluate this, your brain is telling you, what are you doing, essentially? The amount of effort that you're providing is not giving you the reward, the expectation. So your metabolic cost is greater than. So you're going to want to avoid persisting in that task. Okay. And then you will start to slow down because the visual inputs mainly, it's all about the visual inputs here. The visual inputs are going to just be slower and slower and slower. Okay. Now I can think about this mentally too whenever I'm running. Whenever as you're, let's see, how do I say this? If you think about, you're moving here, you're moving down this road, and you're moving down this road like this, okay? Mentally, I'm thinking, I feel pretty good. I like this. I'm enjoying this activity right now because of the amount of effort that I'm providing for this bout, this physical bout or mental bout, is giving me reward. Okay. And I can think about this. I can think about sensations here. I can feel every time my feet hits the pavement, it feels light, meaning each step I take, it feels like my feet aren't blasting the ground where I'm just like hitting it and bouncing off. Okay. As I get tired, I can start to feel my feet smacking the ground, and the contact points of the feet feels like it's greater than whenever I'm just bouncing off the ground. And this is signaling to me like I am just stomping. I'm running heavy is how I evaluate that to myself versus I'm running light. Okay. And I can think about that, and it makes me think, okay, I need to kind of calm my stress response. Okay. This calculator here, I need to stop making it trick me. Okay. Because we can think about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. And this is so sympathetic is get up and go, activation, arousal, go, go, go. Parasympathetic is like you're calm. Okay, so regardless, as all of this mental and physical effort is being exerted, and I'm way up here, but I am slowing down physically, I need to bring myself back down to this range here. Let's say this is my range of optimal performance, okay? And I need to calm myself down. So I can do that in two ways. The visual inputs coming in can help me. And also breathing. Because as you're using all of this metabolic energy, as you're using such metabolic demands here, trying to keep up, trying to persist with this physical activity that you like to enjoy, you can deliberately take control of your eye movements, slow them down. You can just focus in on something. So if I'm running here, and maybe there's a rock in the road here, and as I'm approaching it, I'm going to stare at that rock. And it works better if it's like maybe 10, 15 yards in front of me. So can you see? Let's say this is a rock. Okay. And then as I get closer, I can bounce my eye movements and find something else to focus on. And then for 10, 15 more yards, I'm just staring at this rock. Okay. And then I'm just going to keep finding something and make sure my eyes are not in an increased gaze, because increased gaze means you're way up here. You're way up here in the sympathetic range, and you're just going to exhaust yourself, either accurately, like it's legit, or you're just going to confuse yourself because of this internal calculator, and this reward and cost value is going to be inflated. That's why we talked about the act of quitting is mental, because these glia accumulate evidence that actions are futile and suppress unsuccessful behavior, because your internal calculators, these biological calculators, are going to think, well, this action, this effort is unsuccessful. And it could be true, but you can keep going a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more in life, because people have a tendency to just want to quit early. And that's not so much the case. You can keep going. You have to bypass these internal calculators. You have to bypass these value systems that causes you to quit, causes your policy here that you're updating your beliefs, your core beliefs. I can't. I'm done. And your phenotype to, I'm just going to avoid that. You can update this and change it. That's what's valuable about life. Because you want to do something because you're doing it, and you can do better because humans have an infinite capacity to succeed and do better. You can take control of this and utilize these two behavioral tools, or these two endogenous ways of modulating your autonomic nervous system. Okay. One is the vision, and then the other one is breathing. Because I promise you, as you're running that physical effort, your breathing is, think about it as the rate and depth. It's fast. It's too fast. So you can deliberately slow your breath down, and that's going to also bring you back down. Okay, so vision, taking conscious control and not having so much eye gaze, focusing in on something. And as you're running towards it, you will kind of bypass and trick these internal calculators. I promise you, you will. So vision and the breathing, taking conscious control over both the eyes and your breathing, because they are directly related to this autonomic nervous system. Okay, and that's exactly what this paper is about. They trick these zebrafish in exactly a task like this, where they determine that actions are futile, that the actions they're doing is not giving them anything. So why do it? Why persist? And as the degree to which you can kind of set yourself up to perform better and to kind of maintain and persist versus quit is going to be a lot of benefits in life. This is a lot of psychology. This is a lot of mental toughness, you could say. It doesn't matter if you like to run or not. You can apply this to everything in life. Because these core beliefs, your core beliefs here, will own you, even if they're not accurate. You will be owned by this kind of reward and cost benefit thing. Your phenotype. It's like, who controls your life? Is it going to be you? Or is it going to be these either false perceptions or the external world? Then I don't know. It doesn't matter to me who owns you, but something owns you. This is all about taking control of your life, because that's what feeds in the adaptive responses in your actions. Remember, from here to here, we hit the dorsal striatum for actions, the basal ganglia. Okay? So, that is, in summary, what this is about. Okay? So, I have a note here. Behavior pattern equals trying to achieve a goal, repeatedly failing despite trying harder, and giving up temporarily, and then trying again. So the time it takes for you to give up temporarily and then try again, persisting, I just showed you how you can accelerate that gap, that temporal domain here, how you can bypass that so you can persist for longer. And this works. This is built into our nervous system. This is all endogenous stuff. You will quit way before your body will give up, will fail you. And that doesn't matter if it's a mental bout or a physical bout. We are who we are because of this. I think I covered everything. I don't know though. I hope so. All right. Persist versus quit. You can keep going.